effect. That was.
No more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
What's up, Horror Fiends? It's your boy, Ricky Van, aka Ricky Grimes. I am back with another episode of the Three Corners of Horror, Horror Fiend TV. Of course, we got the lovely panel for tonight. This is going to be a special episode. But first of all, I want to introduce to you guys, once again, welcome back, the fourth corner of the show, Lexi. What's good, Lexi? How are you?
I'm doing good. I get to hang out with JR so much. I missed you guys. I had to, hang out with my Brains and Brews crew.
Yes, coming back.
I missed you guys.
Cheers.
Cheers to
actually,
that.
we all cheer for big
For
bottles,
big
of,
bottles
beer.
of wine.
Salud. And of course, Joe the psychologist, my brother from another mother. What's good, bro?
Well, we got Nicolas Cage, psychological
Daddy.
horror here. So let's find out if it really was Longlegs or just some stumps.
Something JR would say.
Yes, I was just thinking that.
In this episode, we will be discussing the 2024 film Longlegs. Written and directed by Osgood Perkins, the film stars Maikamonroe as Lee Harker, Nicolas Cage as Longlegs, Blair Underwood as Agent Carter, and Alicia Witt as Ruth Harker. Man, Longlegs. It's been a while since I went to the movie theaters. It was quite the experience, I must say. Crowd was packed. Surprisingly, it was still pretty full. And at the end of the film, not to give anything away, but there was a little bit of a standing ovation. People started clapping. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? We're back into old days. What's going on? Nobody does that anymore. But all right, Lexi, I'm gonna start with you. This film is interesting because throughout the entire marketing campaign of this film, they never ever showed you the character of Longlegs. They never talked about Nicolas Cage. If you did your research, you knew he was in it, but they did not rely on Nicolas Cage to sell this film at all. In fact, they saved a lot of money on budget to kind of, not spend too much on promotion. They did this very clever and unique viral marketing campaign. I don't know if you two did this. I did. There was a billboard with a phone number on it. And if you call it,
You made me do it.
I made you do it, yeah. You get Longlegs. You get a message from Longlegs, and it's creepy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's creepy.
They never showed Longlegs in the trailers or promotional pictures or nothing. You had to go into the theater at the time, and that's when you get your first glimpse of the character. The actress, Maikamonroe, the same thing. When she first did her first scene with Nicolas Cage, it was the very first time she's seen him in the makeup and in character. And I love when films do that because it brings out the performances. It highlights them much better than, going in there already knowing what to expect, So I love the marketing strategy for this film. It's just genius. And it worked. We'll talk about the financial success a little bit later. But let's talk about Longlegs himself. Lexi, what did you think of this character and Nicolas Cage's performance overall? Like, if you went in here not knowing he was Longlegs, would you have known that was Nicolas Cage?
Not at all. The horror effect on his face, you could not tell that it was Nicolas Cage. I am a die-hard Nicolas Cage fan. He's my number one actor, if not that, the top three actor for me. So when I heard Nicolas Cage and horror together, I mean, he's been in many, but I was like, I'm down. The thing is you get it being in theaters, you get to see it once. And when I do reviews with you guys, I try to at least watch it twice. So as first glance, I wish I would have saw more of him. And like you said, we don't get to see it in trailers and stuff. And I think I was watching something else and the trailer came up and I didn't even know it was for that because you don't get to see Nicolas Cage in the trailer, like you said. So I was like, what is this? Oh, wait, la, 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 la. No, I can't see this because I try to learn from you guys. Don't watch trailers. So, yeah, no, Nicolas Cage in being Longlegs, I could not recognize him. You couldn't tell. What gives it away is his attitude and his persona and his personality. So you can see him in there without seeing his physical face and his features. But the character is very eerie, very creepy, very, like ashy and, like
Very
just
off-putting.
gross.
Yeah. Makes you
Yes,
uncomfortable just
off-putting is
looking
the
at him.
best way to describe it. Yeah. So he's creepy. It gives you that nightmarish feeling or that weird neighbor you just like want to avoid. Yeah, and because it starts with the house in the beginning, right? In the cold open, you see the house and it's like, howdy neighbor.
What,
He's weird.
1970, right?
1970.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, knowing it was him, it's hard because you could hear it in the voice because you're looking for it. Now, if I didn't know it was him, well, I know it was Cage by his voice and his performance. I don't know. It might not pop into my mind, but seeing the character in that makeup, I would have said to myself, all right, that's an actor. He's under heavy makeup. That's somebody that they really went out of their way to change, And I dug that. Oh, Joe, this is very interesting because I believe you are also a Nicolas Cage fan. Am I right?
Yep.
Talk to me, brother. What did you think about his portrayal and the character of Longlegs himself?
All right, I feel like I'm sitting here like.
By the way, full disclosure, none of us three talked about what we thought of this film prior. This is the first time.
No.
We always, we don't like going in here talking about it, so we're getting first reactions now. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to, give the viewers that little heads up on that.
With that, before we used to talk about it, and Rick would kind of have a little heads up on where I came in on a movie, and honestly, overall, I liked the Longlegs character. I did find myself making comparisons a bit to the Buffalo Bill character in The Silence of the Lambs, which later on, on my closing thoughts is something I'll bring up because I'm sure I'm not the only person to have said this is kind of like Silence of the Lambs. I could not be
By
the
design.
only one. I'm
no,
sure.
it's by design.
Okay, but so,
Absolutely.
but
right.
the character himself, like he, all right. I'll talk about the whole character and just get where it was when he was being questioned that he went Nicolas Cage. If they would have told him not, and you know what scene I'm talking about, all of a sudden he's like, he starts talking. I'm like,
The interrogation scene?
yeah.
Yes.
I'm like, you have done so well to hide and sound like Nicolas Cage. And in those two, he's like, goes like this and he talks and he turns over and he says something. And I'm like,
I got a Renfield feeling
I'm like, you
when
fucked
he
it
did
up.
that part.
You fucked it up. Like for me, not wholly, I still enjoyed the movie, but with heavy makeup, there was a reason Charlize Theron won her Oscar when she played Eileen Wuornos for Monster, because you hid the person. The minute he showed his glimpses of what Nicolas Cage does in almost all his movies, it was like a rock moment. Like, eyebrow. It was like he had to put a little part of what Nicolas Cage is. And I feel if those two little parts weren't in there, it would have been a great overall character. But as soon as he did that, and we discussed when you're into a movie and you get taken out, once you get taken out, you start thinking about things. You're not so focused on the movie. And that's where, then you're like, I got to focus again. You're like, man, I can't believe he just did that.
It's not even only that scene. It was also when he's in the car and he's screaming out loud. You can see
that
it.
Scene,
yeah.
though.
Now, and
Me too.
I did too, but they should have.
Nicolas Cage.
Osgood should have restrained Nicolas Cage a little bit in it, so that way the character. But he did a great job. He was creepy as fuck. Like I said, there was. When you got to look at him, I just kind of saw Buffalo Bill, and that was like the only other negative part. And it's not like he literally looked like him. It was just the similarities for me were just a little much. So I would have probably changed the look a little bit more. But we're talking about starting off in the 70s and then in the 90s. I grew up in the 90s. Were you born, Lexi?
Interesting that they set this movie in the 90s. We don't get a lot of films taking place in the 90s. It's usually the 70s or the 80s because those eras are so bombastic and so like you could look at a film, that's the 80s, that's the 70s, but the 90s falls kind of in between obviously the 80s and the 2000s, and other than the color palettes used throughout the 90s, flannel shirts and all that shit.
Yeah.
It's hard to pinpoint it immediately, so I didn't know it was the 90s until I saw like all the the presidential administration pictures.
Right,
like,
when you saw Clinton in the background, you know, because these are offices for the government, so the president would be behind this. So that's how you knew it was the 90s.
That was a dead giveaway.
Yep.
Yeah, but again, for me, he did great. As you guys said, the makeup work was done. What he did with his voice, he was able to not sound Nicolas Cage. If those moments where he had to be Nicolas Cage weren't in here, people would probably rave a little bit more because he never acted like Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's my thought on that. It's a nitpick, but I didn't. Lexi brought up the other one because as soon as she said about the screaming when he's in the car, I focused on the interrogation. But when she said, I'm like, yep, that was the other scene too. That it felt like it was just Nicolas Cage in the car acting Nicolas Cage.
But let me ask you guys a question. I just wish
they would have done more. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Lexi. Go.
I just wish they would have done a little more to his, because he was so ashy looking, so frail, like white and just off-putting. But I just wish there was a little more, I don't know, wrinkles or something to just portray him out more.
The makeup to me felt a little caked on. Like you could tell it's
exactly.
makeup.
It was very caked
especially
on.
the nose.
I was thinking to myself within the film, okay, is he supposed to be a guy that's putting on this makeup, or they're trying to portray that's what he really looks like?
That's what he really looks like.
Because I'm like, the makeup they kind of
exactly
overdid it.
Was he dressing this way? Yeah.
Especially not with the features, but the color, the pasty white.
It was.
You could tell it looks caked on, because they.
But at the same time, it's the winter.
Miss Doubtfire feeling. Was it?
Oh no.
I don't know.
That's it. You ruined it for me.
I love it.
But one thing I want to say though, I guess you mentioned the car scene, and this goes hand in hand with what I wanted to ask before. I asked myself this because it's true when Joe mentions his performances and Lexi mentioned Renfield. Yes, you see Cage in there now, but if I did not know that was Cage under the makeup, would I have said, "Oh, that's Nicolas Cage"? I'm not as big on Nicolas Cage as you two. Not that I don't like him. I love Cage, but he's not he's not one of my favorite actors. I enjoy his resurgence as of late because he makes all types of random shit, and I fucking love that. And of course, I was always a fan since I raised in Arizona. I mean, I go back, so I know Cage.
I'm since Moonstruck, and leaving Las Vegas.
But the scene when he's in the car, I'm glad I was in the theater for that because the sound system and when he's yelling, it was so loud and it made me uncomfortable. It's like, can you stop it? Stop yelling! But that's good. That's the feeling.
That's funny you say that. We'll get to it.
Yeah. But this character of Longlegs is interesting because they introduce a lot of elements into this. There's a lot of Satanism, a lot of satanic panic. This was right at the tail end of the satanic panic era, which is interesting. That's probably why they chose the 90s specifically for this story. Because Satanism was huge back in the mid 80s to the early 90s, especially when it came to the heavy metal scene. Oh my god! So I found that was the reason why they went for this 90s era, and they introduced a lot of supernatural. I think supernatural is probably the best word to put because they're trying to tell us Lee is a clairvoyant, right? So she has kind of I don't want to say psychic powers, but she can sense things, obviously. And then with the doll, so the character of Longlegs is a doll maker, and he puts some satanic powers into this doll via these metal orbs. Yeah.
part of
So
himself.
again, that's going more into like the supernatural side of things. If people do believe that, if some people don't, it depends on where you fall on that. But they were blending a lot of realism and like a lot of fantasy into this film. So you don't know exactly where the movie fell. I think they did a good job of balancing it. So it's not too far
I
removed from the
agree.
real world. They kept it grounded just enough. So
I
near
agree.
the end of the film, yeah, Lee comes up with this plot device. He has an accomplice. There's no way he's doing this by himself because the character of Longlegs would always leave his little card behind. They recognize the same penmanship on every single card, and there was never proof of anyone else being inside of the home, which when we get to later, yes, there was someone else in the home. I don't know how they never found proof of this nun character, but let's get right into the meat and the potatoes of this. Lee's mother, Ruth, was revealed to be the accomplice, and Alicia Witt she played Ruth. I think she's a very good actress. She was in Walking Dead, Joe. I don't know if you remember.
Oh
her.
yeah. Oh yeah. No.
I did.
But I know you would know her from Urban Legend.
Urban Legends.
Yeah.
Urban Legends.
So they brought up this character of Ruth, and all of a sudden, yes, she's the accomplice. So let's get into this, Joe. You always ask me, did I figure this out? I'm gonna ask you first this time. Did you figure this out, and if you did, which most likely you did, because I think everyone figured this one out. But when did you figure this one out is the better question, bro.
Well, all right. First, I want to give kudos to Alicia Witt because I didn't when you talk about makeup work and everything, I didn't recognize her. I had
They
I
aged
didn't-
her up a bit, yeah.
Yeah,
They
I did
did.
not recognize her at all when Adam and I get in the car so I can look up stuff because I avoided looking stuff up. I'm like, oh my god, did you know that Alicia Witt? And there was a show back in the '90s called Sybil with Christine Baranski and Sybil Shepherd. Alicia Witt played the daughter. That's kind of was one of her first years ago. So I've seen this girl. Basically, we've grown up together because Urban Legends. She has done a lot, and I did not recognize her. So kudos on what they did to make her character almost unrecognizable. If everybody else recognized her, then I guess I'm just blind.
I wouldn't, honestly. I knew she was in it because in the beginning they had her name in the credits. That's the only reason why I knew she was in it.
I was looking for her. I never found her. That's the whole part too.
Yeah.
I'm like, when she
I didn't
pop
even
up,
think Urban Legends until you guys just said it, so it just blew
Yeah.
my mind.
And if you think, granted, Urban Legends is, over 20 years old. So,
Mhm.
but
when they mention real quick that there's a supposed victim that had escaped Longlegs and is now in a mental institution, I said, "Oh, that's got to be Alicia Witt's character." And when they showed her, I was like, she was even younger than I thought. Oh, wait a minute, what the fuck is Alicia Witt? Because she was already on the phone prior, so she was already in it. We just didn't know.
But and by the way, the sole survivor, that was Kiernan Shipka, who plays Sabrina the Teenage Witch. She's also in The Black Coat's Daughter. Yep. And so she's also a little up and coming one. So I recognized her. But as far as figuring out the accomplice, so first of all, they were hinting how Lee was clairvoyant to it. Right? So you already were getting that there's going to be some sort of connection. So then about halfway through, I'm like, I wonder if she was the little girl in the beginning that went outside and met him when they first show you Longlegs. Lee.
Yeah.
Then I thought, the cold open, I'm like, I wonder if that was Lee. And then as it starts getting a little bit more, you think back to what the mother said, especially talking about seeing bad things. So you're like, man, I hope it's not going to be that. Because I don't know. I almost wish we would have found out there was an accomplice, but not know who it was. But then to turn out to be the mom. And then the way they wrapped it up, it was a good explanation. But I would have liked more breadcrumbs throughout the whole movie. Because I feel that it never, when we do horror Italiano, they leave you breadcrumbs throughout, hinting you who the person's going to be. Again, we'll probably have to watch it again to see if you can see all the breadcrumbs leading to Ruth being the killer, but I don't know if I felt it was
Too easy.
too easy.
They kind of
like
did.
they so here's the story. It turns out that Ruth had showed up when Longlegs went there. He showed up the next day and made an offer to her. In that offer was either you die or you can become my accomplice and it spares your daughter. And Lee saw all this, hence the connection that they had. But then you put in the satanic part. She wasn't a nun. She was something else. That was just an outfit that she wore.
She was a nurse, right?
Yeah, she was a nurse. The outfit was just to be able to make it easy to walk into the house without any if a priest or a nun,
Everybody trusts a nun.
Exactly. You're not gonna think that this person's here to do you harm.
If they're like, you want something? Here's a doll. Nah, son, like you can keep that. Shit.
Well, they were like, you won a contest, and those dolls were fucking creepy. As soon as I opened, I'm like, yeah, you can. No.
Real human hair. I'm all set.
It looked weird, and I was like in my head, I'm like, I screamed out, "Take that legless witch out of my house," which is from Friends. But it was, I don't know, it was just a little too easy. It was, it kind of felt that everything that Lee was going through, instead of just being really totally unexplained, you got an explanation of it. So it was a little too easy. I did like the overall reveal and how they did it. How when she blew off Lee's doll's head to free her, and for her to then remember everything, because then that's the other part. So the balls had part of his essence. Like there was a lot of things like how was he doing this?
Yeah.
And then so Lee goes to become an FBI agent, and she never figured out that Longlegs was living in her basement all those years.
Yeah, that part kind of threw me off.
Like,
yeah.
Really? Because we're talking about it was
we're supposed to believe Longlegs moved in as soon as they made that deal.
Yeah, that's what that's basically what
the door
happened.
Was locked.
Yeah, so for 20 years. You didn't know Longlegs lived in your basement.
And that's why I said they kind of revealed it in hindsight when you think about it. When he kept saying the man downstairs. I mean, yeah, he's talking about Satan, but in duality, he's talking about himself because he was living downstairs.
The man downstairs. So that was like, because then, you were built, they built a good character in Lee and the stuff that she was going through. She wasn't an outgoing person. You can tell she was an introvert. She was smart. She had good instincts, but it's all washed away when it's revealed that Longlegs had lived under her the last 20 years. So it really makes her look like an incapable, officer.
Now that I think about it, though, I didn't know this before, but now that we're talking about it, the fact that there was a doll there, she was under some influence of the satanic presence that Longlegs had over her. Maybe
which could have been why
clouded her and kind of suppressed those memories.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you again. This is
I just thought about that. I mean,
that's a little. That might be a little logical, but at the same time, 20 years and you never would have. I'm sorry, I could not live anywhere and not try to open that door that's been locked. And not only would I have opened it, but I would have gone down there. If there's nothing down there, turned it into a room for myself. Like there was like that part. You're right. Maybe when they did the doll, it's her to forget that and forget that he's down there.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel that just at some point in time in 20 years, you would have, because they showed in the movie when she looked at the door and she's like wondering, and then they make that revelation and you're like, so then you question the locked door? So that's all I got to say about that part.
You have to suspend your disbelief a lot with this one. How about you, Lexi?
You can't do that with serial killers that are more real life.
For me, it was predictable. It gave away way too easily, way too early. I went with my best friend, who's totally not into horror, but he's my best friend, so he's gonna ride with me till I die.
Sometimes those are that's a good
Yeah.
gauge sometimes to see what they think about something that's
So
different
he
from
totally
theirs.
brought up the whole Silence of the Lambs thing. He did.
Silence of the
But
Lambs, Seven,
yes.
Zodiac.
Seven.
There's a
Yeah,
lot
Yeah.
of films.
a lot of that you can.
Yeah.
But Silence is one that you can definitely go. This is kind of like Silence.
1000%.
Well, when they were getting
Lex.
into the whole, no, you're good. When they were getting into the whole accomplice situation, I whispered to my friend, I'm like, I already know who this is. And I whispered to my daughter, I already know who the accomplice is. And they're like, what? How'd you figure it out? I'm like, well, when you're a horror fan, you got to listen to their personality, their persona, their body language, the conversation they're having with other people. And for me, I found out instantly through the phone calls to the mother. Hey, how are you doing? Who makes the phone call to their mother and says, hi, 20 seconds later, hi. How are you? 20 seconds later, good. It's like they had this awkward conversation. Like if me and my mom were talking, it's like, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm good. You know, it's like within seconds answering questions. So it was just awkward. The mother was just very static in her conversation with Lee. And I was like, something's up with this mom. And then they go into the whole decoding the letters and there's an accomplice. And I was like, it's got to be the mom, but maybe I'm just overreacting. And then we meet the mother and I see she's just as pale and white as Longlegs. And I was like, this is the accomplice. This is like husband and wife. Like, to me, it was just the makeup of Ruth just being too similar to Longlegs. And so I was like, this is a dead giveaway. And then she's asking questions because Agent Carter said, go into your house and talk to your mother. And so when she went there to talk to the mom, I see her and I was like, oh God, she's just as ashy and white and pale as Longlegs. And then she starts asking questions to her mom and mom's looking left. When you're lying, you look left. Okay. And so I was like, this girl's lying. She's the freaking, I already know it. And so I'm telling my daughter and my best friend, I was like, I already know who it is, but y'all can figure it out.
I would have been like, shut up.
Did they?
Yeah.
They figured it out too?
didn't.
Oh, they
No,
didn't?
because
Okay.
they ain't as good as me. But I love you guys if you're watching. Kudos to Alicia Witt because she did a great job. And it blows my mind that she's from Urban Legends. I didn't even realize that. It didn't hit me until you guys said it. I was like, holy shit. You're right. Yeah. She did a great job, but it was too easy too soon.
When I figured this one out, it was definitely not right away. And I love how Lexi mentioned the phone conversations between Lee and Ruth. I loved it. It was off-putting. You're right. It made you uncomfortable,
was.
but in a way, it felt realistic. Because sometimes you talk to people and they just, it's just when you're watching a movie and there's a conversation, it's so like perfect. So sometimes when you talk to somebody, it's gonna feel awkward. There's gonna be those weird pauses. It just felt natural to me. And this,
Not from hello though to your mother.
But I think they wanted you to know that there was some kind of disconnect between Lee and Ruth off the jump.
Ruth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they wanted you to kind of get with that.
Which
But
could be the spell.
What's up?
Which could be the spell,
Could
which
be
you
the spell,
brought up.
yeah.
True.
Could be the spell.
Yeah.
They never were able to make the
Yeah.
connection because that spell had kept them apart.
Yeah. Once they mentioned, once Longlegs was in the interrogation room and kept bringing up her mother, I was like, yeah, I think, all right, it's her mom. And then when they went into the third and final act, Birthday Girls, I believe that was the name of it.
Yes.
And they went to go pick up her mom for questioning. I'm like, oh yeah, it's Ruth. Here we go. Here we go. And I love the fact that she just went in there, not just one shotgun shot to the face. She went around to the passenger side and finished her off. Like, come on, bro. I love that. It was a little bit on the nose. There was no real mystery on that one. And I think, and again, they kept mentioning it was a murder-suicide, always a father killing his children and the mother. But they always said there was no one else inside the house. But then again, these letters are all in here. So who's? But yes,
Bringing them.
there was someone else in the house.
Yeah.
So Ruth was always
Ruth.
in the house. No one ever saw another person going in there, or they never found her DNA anywhere. It's weird. I don't know. That I think was a kind of a.
Well, DNA. Remember, it might have been in the infancy back then, but it's probably when these murders all started happening,
good
because
show.
it was going from the 70s.
Yeah, good show.
So maybe come the 90s, we would have gotten to the DNA.
But there was a scene where Ruth did get her hands dirty because she walked back into that car with blood all over her. So she must have been she must have been stabbing somebody over and over to get all that blood on her. So yes,
It's probably the
she
child.
got physical. So
It's probably the child because well, actually, it doesn't. It's a little. It leaves it open to make you wonder just how much of an accomplice she was.
But you know why? I mentioned that how do they know there was no one else involved other than the family? You said there's no DNA, which is right. 70s into the 90s, it wasn't as robust and thorough as it is now, but they knew enough to know that there was no one else involved other than the family themselves.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's weird. That's a little bit of a disconnect in my opinion for that. But I mean, I could be missing something.
And if police are going to be asking questions, did you see anything suspicious?
Yes.
No one is going to say, "I saw a nut."
That's what I mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
No one else saw a woman walking into this home, and shortly
nut.
after the whole family's dead.
Yeah.
And that's the
Like
same MO
what-
with every murder.
Right. If they would have asked the question, "Did you see anything suspicious?" Most people would have thought, "Did I see a man going in there?"
Yeah.
I did not see a man.
I lost track
And
of
if
how
you
many
saw the
murders.
nun, I forgot how many they said, but because it turns out when she did the
13 was missing. That was supposed to be Lee.
Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's weird, but let's close this one out. Let's rate it. Let's discuss any final moments we have on this film. This is a pretty fun conversation because, again, like Lexi mentioned, normally we watch a movie once, twice to prepare. This is a one-time watch for all three of us. So of course we could be missing stuff, but it's organic. I love it. So Lexi, rate the film, and if you want to talk about anything else.
So again, based off of first watch, and I would love to watch it again. I'm going to watch it again when it streams for free. But for me, first watch is a 3.5. And the reason why, and I'm a huge, and maybe I'm biased, huge Nicolas Cage fan. That's the main reason why I went to go see it. However, I wish I would have had more of Longlegs. We got a lot of Lee Harker, a lot of Agent Carter, a lot of the Asian lady. I forget her name. A lot of Lee Harker. But I just wish we would have had more of Nicolas Cage and learn. And I guess I nitpicked it a lot because I'm going to be honest, full disclosure, it was definitely a major, massive slow burn, which I don't mind sometimes, but this was massively slow. And I felt myself do this a lot. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, I'm still in a movie theater, still watching. And Nicolas Cage, in my book, and I'm biased, does no wrong. He did no wrong. However, we didn't see enough of him, for me. And then to go into the whole, he's a doll maker, and there's a little silver ball in the brain, and I'm just like, this is dumb as fuck. I'm sorry, just to be honest. But
yeah, I could have
to
done
me,
without
it
the
didn't
ball.
hit me.
They didn't need that.
Yeah,
They could have
they
just put
didn't need it.
satanic energy into the doll itself. And not had the metal
Exactly. We didn't
balls.
need the silver ball. And
Yeah,
I
it was
looked at my friend and I was like,
what's that movie with the metal, the balls? Phantasm.
Phantasm.
but still, it didn't keep me engaged, and it disappointed me a little bit. And my favorite scenes were the car scenes and the very cold beginning in the cold open, just to see him, just like you only saw half his face, and then he bends down, just so scary,
By
and
the
that
way,
was so
Lexi,
awesome.
I
Yeah.
loved how whenever we went back to the 70s, they had the actual 8mm format. For
Yes,
oh,
yes.
that was
Yeah.
great.
Yes.
And then
Yes,
when
the
the intro came,
cinematography was amazing.
it spread out slowly into like
Yeah.
present time.
Exactly. The cinematography was A1. Like, it was really great. the one thing that bothered me the most, and I think you mentioned it, Rick, was being in the surround sound of the theater and the annoyances of some noises. The biggest annoyance to me was Lee Harker pointing her gun and and I'm just
No,
like,
hold on.
bro.
I'm gonna say it right now. That is part of what I loved.
Her-
I'll get
Really?
into it. Oh,
right.
yes. I'll explain.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Continue.
Yeah. However, counter reacting to your future.
I'm glad you brought it up, though.
nation-
That's fine.
Yeah, to me, like, I will say one good thing about it. It settled anxiety to me. So when I heard her, I was like, oh my God, what's coming up? What's coming up? What's behind her? What's in front of her? Because you don't see it. It's panned on her. The camera's on her. So I was like, what's going on? What is she freaking? But every time but being a police officer, FBI agent, or whoever she was, you should be in control and keep your feelings out of it. And so for me, her breathing that hard, I get she's scared, and I get like being in a situation that she's in. She's trying to figure out the crime and solve the puzzle. And then she sees the guy in her house. So I get the anxiety feeling, but I didn't need to hear it so loudly in the theater. That's just me nitpicking.
Joe, the psychologist, you're up next.
Whew. First of all, thank God I did not see this in those theaters that are like lounge chairs where you can like lay back, because I probably would have just napped through it.
Yes.
It was for slow burn. Holy crap. I mean, and I went on a Monday, so I didn't work. The only thing I worked was me and Rick recording. And I literally, after he and I were done, I had one more beer as I put my room back together, and I was done drinking because I had a lot to do. I literally did that, when you're sitting there and you fall asleep and your head goes back and you catch yourself before your head goes all the way, you like snap. And I looked at Adam and I'm like, oh no. So
What did I miss?
and he told me too that he almost nodded off. I'm like, I think I might have slept for like about 2 minutes in the movie. So yeah, as far as a slow burn, and I got that is part of the investigation, but the investigation wasn't as exciting like the Silence of the Lambs investigation was. And the breathing, the only thing that was missing was that, there was night vision watching her as she's walking around with her gun as she's breathing, because that also, when she was doing her breathing, it took me back to Silence of the Lambs when Jodie's down in the bottom and, she's being
You're right.
looked at in the night vision and all you hear is her breathing as she's panicked. That is also normal human reaction in those situations. We don't know how long Lee had been a, FBI agent. Probably the first time she's involved in a situation where she's got to pull out her gun that way. So, that could be panic breathing, but it, again, like from what I understand, Osgood Perkins doesn't watch mainstream horror, and like maybe you should. It might help you a little bit.
His father was fucking psycho. I mean, he should.
Well, I mean, and so it like for me, if you don't do mainstream, then that means you missed the Silence of the Lambs. But then I sat there and go, you must have seen Silence of the Lambs. And if you were trying to pay an homage to it, then kudos. You actually did a great job if you were paying an homage to a movie and introducing, a new audience to the style that movie was done, an investigation. But the investigation was much more fun in that one as opposed to this one that was putting me to sleep. So Nicholas did awesome. I'm torn between a 3 and a 3.5, honestly. Like, I don't want to be the dick and just go 3. That's kind of where I'm at. So I'm just gonna sit on a 3, to be honest with you, only because I would have given gone up to a 4 if Nicolas Cage hadn't been Nicolas Cage during some of the scenes. If he would have just kept the performance as Longlegs and not shown us it's Nick under all this makeup, it would have been so fucking awesome. So yeah, I'm just gonna a 3. I'm good.
I think you guys are being a little too harsh on this film.
I know you were gonna say that.
First of all, yes, you said it, Joe. you guys are missing the point. Lee Harker is not an experienced FBI agent. She's brand new, and they just promoted
She
her
was a new hire.
because they figured out
yeah.
she was clairvoyant. So they put her on a more escalated case that they've been working on for decades with Longlegs, and they always kept saying, "Is she ready for this? She's not ready for this." So when she
Right.
pulls out her gun and she's breathing, I suffer from anxiety, right? I love that because I hate it in movies when all of a sudden the main hero, no matter what, they pull out the gun and they're fucking John Wayne, and they're not scared. Nothing phases them. The fact that she was breathing, it puts you in her position. And as a sufferer of anxiety, like I am,
Exactly.
and and that was one of my main points of this film. I love the realism that they added to this with little moments like that, because people won't catch it. It annoyed you. That's fine. I caught it as like, wow,
It's
I'm,
real.
I'm in her mind. I'm in Lee right now, because the breathing was so loud and it was so distracting. But again, when you're in her shoes, when she's new and there's somebody roaming around her fucking house, and she's like, and I'm like, it gave me anxiety, and I love it when films bring an emotion out of me. And this movie's about an hour and 40 minutes, give or take, a little more, probably like 45, I don't know, something like that. And I can see why you would say it's a slow burn. I was always entertained. I was never bored, and I was high as fuck during this movie too.
So was I.
So normally when I'm high, I tend to fall asleep faster. But here, I was always glued because even though not everything hit, I already mentioned my complaints, but I was always at least, okay, I'm curious how they're going to go with this movie because it's all over the place right now in certain things. You know, I talked about like the weird supernatural shit, but yes, I didn't. It was a slow burn, but I mentioned a movie like what was that? The Night House. What was that movie we saw? I forgot, but it was another slow.
It was a slow burn, but it kept you
but done well.
the whole time you were
So
entertained.
for me, I'm not speaking for you guys. I'm speaking for me.
Yeah.
I kind of related to that where I was always interested. Like it is slow, and I hate slow movies, but I'm into it. In the character of Lee, I love how you mentioned she's an introvert, just like me, and we found out because her mom said no one ever came to visit them. They were always by themselves. So she was raised always alone, and I love how separated from everything Lee Harker always was. You could see her like her little quirks and mannerisms, and how she always like internalized all her emotions.
The other part is that, remember, Ruth kept on telling her the story. The reason nobody came to visit is because Longlegs lived downstairs.
Yeah, I know.
They couldn't have anybody come
Oh,
visit
yeah.
because people were going to figure out
Exactly.
why is
Yeah,
it
yeah.
blocked?
And
So
that's
she
why.
purposely kept them isolated.
Good call.
And then
Good shout. That's a
painted
good
it-
shout.
Painted it that nobody cared for them.
Yes, and
It was
that's why.
it was a double mental fuck that she put on
Yes,
her.
and that's why Lee is who she is. And I just,
Mhm.
you know, whenever there's a movie like this, you always get strong characters. They're not afraid, this and that, whatever. But Lee Harker was such a weird character because she was so odd in so many different ways. The way she reacted to things, it felt refreshing. And the fact that whenever she pulled out her gun and the breathing, she was scared as fuck. But I'm not saying you have to like that. I'm just telling you why
Can I say
think
one thing?
I think that's
I'm sorry.
what the director was going for. Yeah, of course, yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt, but as big as the Nicholas fan cage that I am, I felt like the character of Lee Harker overpowered Longlegs.
Well, this movie's not about Longlegs. This movie is
and
about
it's
Lee
about
Harker.
Ruth. It's about Ruth.
But I'm
Well,
saying
yes, I could see that too.
It's about Ruth.
I was talking about Lee Parker or Harker. Sorry, Lee Harker. I'm thinking Spider-Man.
It's her film because
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lee
Yeah.
Harker was the one that's
She-
traumatized. She's the one that
I
met
liked her out of
Longlegs
all
in
the
beginning.
characters.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
y'all relate because y'all introverts.
just like in Silence of the Lambs, you
That's
think
true.
of obviously Anthony Hopkins' character, right? But Jodie Foster is your main antagonist. You're following her story
Yep.
in that
Right.
film. But in this movie, I'm gonna give it a 4. This film because I think the cinematography, the sound design, I think the direction and the camera work was much stronger than the writing itself. The writing was that's the weakest point
Yeah.
in this movie for me. A lot of stuff
agree.
that didn't need to be in there was in there, like the balls, and they just convoluted it for no reason whatsoever. But this movie has so much hype going in, and that's what I hate when movies are hyped, because you go in there with these expectations, right? But the trade-off is this: this movie was a financial success. It made its money back within the first day, and that's because they spent nothing on the marketing.
Yeah.
They went viral, but what happens is it hypes it up. So what happens, in my opinion, is when people see it in the theater, they're like, "Oh yeah, this isn't. I didn't think it was. I thought it would be better, right?" But when you go back and you watch it,
again.
but you watch it again, trust me, I might go up again. Speaking for myself, I might go up a score.
Same.
Because when you watch it with an open mind now and no hype, and you pick up on things, and it's like John Carpenter, The Thing. When it first came out, it bombed. Everyone hated it. But and time passes by, and you watch it for what it is. It's a classic. I think this movie is good. It may not be a classic, but I think it's gonna be more appreciated as time goes on.
It's gonna do what Hereditary and Midsommar did.
Yeah.
Because those movies at first a lot of people hated them, but when you watch them
over
again, especially Hereditary, because when I saw that in the theater, I walked out. I'm like, that sucked. That was not the scariest. And then you watch it a couple of times, you're like, this is a great movie.
Midsommar, the same thing. I saw it in the theater. I was like, oh my, that movie's fucking long, bro.
It is long.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I watched it again,
I hate that movie.
and then you realize,
literally, like watch
Florence
it a couple
Pugh's
times.
character. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead.
When you watch it a second time, it's Midsommar, and you see it's a character study on Florence Pugh's character and her journey. Then you appreciate what the film is trying to convey. I think this film, when you watch it again, it's not a movie. It's not Longlegs, right? It's about Lee Harker. This is her story. Not well. If anyone else has anything to say it now.
Nope, I'm good.
I did not go into this movie thinking it was going to be about Hail Satan. I didn't think.
Oh my God, my virgin ears. I was like, stop it.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Three Corners of Horror. This was your Longlegs 2024 review. I'm Mickey Van, Lexi the Fourth Corner. That motherfucker, right? That motherfucker right there. That's my boy. Watch out for him. Joe the Psychologist. With that being said, stay good, stay healthy, stay sane, watch horror films, and most of all, I was going to say drink beer, but you don't have to. Stay scared.
Switch to wine.